Leonard Cohen is an interesting case in music, because when he started making music, he did it quite later in life than most. His first album was released when he was 33 years old, which is pretty old to debut at. This is because Leonard Cohen actually started out as a poet/novelist, which really does tie into his music, which is very poetic. And as someone who has recently fell in love with Leonard Cohen's music, I wondered, what were his works like before he became a musician? Are his novels worth reading? Well, I went out and read one of his 2 novels. The Favorite Game was Leonard Cohen's first novel, published in the fall of 1963. This book is a Bildungsroman following the sexual, romantic, and general life of Lawrence Brevman. The novel starts off at the beginning of Brevman's life with him and his childhood friend, Krantz. The 2 of them live a semi-normal childhood in the city of Montreal. Brevman and Krantz, even as teenagers, are involved in many sexual and romantic escapades. One of Brevman's first being an attempt with the family maid, which is an event that actually happened to Cohen himself. And this novel is very interesting because throughout the story of the book, it becomes quite evident that Brevman is a self-insert for Leonard Cohen himself. Many events in this book have parallels with Leonard Cohen's life, such as the setting being in Montreal where Cohen grew up. This makes the whole plot of the book even more interesting, especially if you're interested in Leonard Cohen. There are even hints at Cohen's future in this novel because Brevman starts to learn the guitar in the novel and becomes quite good in even playing for others. And yes, Brevman, like Cohen, was indeed a poet. However, the novel's qualities aren't just tied to it being an allegory for Cohen's life. The novel also has interesting and philosophical arguments about romance and sexuality. A notable example of this can be seen after Brevman's first experience having sex, where Cohen writes, "He exulted as he marched home, newest member of the adult community. Why weren't all the sleepers hanging out of their windows cheering?" I specifically like this quote because of the ironic tone. It's honestly quite frequent for young men to believe that sex is this ultimate goal in life, something that distinguishes the boys from the men. Yet, when Brevman does this grand act that supposedly turns him into a real man, there's nothing. No awards, no cheering, nothing. Nothing but what you got personally from the experience. And this causes society to pit men and women, causing us as a society to pit men and women against each other. Something that Leonard Cohen has actually spoken about in his music.
Poor, a war between the man and the woman. There is a war between the ones who say there is a war and the ones who say that there isn't.
Furthermore, Cohen also speaks about the impacts of this. How men, because of this, will stop seeing women as somebody they can communicate with, but instead as someone who they can't know unless it's for sex. Cohen, ironically writing, "A friendship between a man and a woman, which is not based on sex, is either hypocrisy or masochism. When I see a woman's face transformed by the orgasm we have reached together, then I know we have met. Anything else is fiction. That's the vocabulary we speak in today. It's the only language left." In all, I think Cohen writes really well about modern sexuality and modern romance, and unfortunately a lot of the stuff he speaks about is still relevant today. This was written in 1963, and most of this unfortunately still holds true today. So, I guess it's just the way it is, but it's still great to see somebody call it out. But sex isn't the only thing Cohen speaks about in this novel. The story also shows what it's like to move cities as a young man, and what it feels like to be in a place that you don't love. Brevman describes Montreal as a city with no real identity, declaring this by stating, "There are no Canadians, there are no Montrealers. Ask a man who he is, and he names a race." And from this, Brevman chooses to move to New York City, a city where he, in his view, can experience a society of like-minded people. As someone who is still growing up, this novel hit very hard for me. I can safely say that this book was, in fact, worth reading. Despite this, there are some problems with the novel. First off, even though the novel is very short, the novel does drag on a bit. This is evident by the fact that the novel was originally going to be published with twice the length, but the publisher forced Cohen to trim it down a fair bit, understandably. And still, I feel like they could have trimmed it up a bit more. Furthermore, the ending is a bit abrupt, and there are some questionable views on women in this novel, but you can kind of interpret that as being what society views and not what Cohen sees. But it's still a little hazy between that, some of the writing in here. Still, I think the book is pretty great. Just nothing extremely exceptional. I give this book a 3 out of 5. I suggest you read it. Now, I do want to read an excerpt from this book that I think is truly great. One that just absolutely stunned me after I read it. I reread this passage 5 times. I really like it. And there are spoilers here, as I will explain the context of it. So if you don't want spoilers, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. Now for the rest of you, when Brevman moves to New York City, he meets this girl named Shell, and they end up hitting it off, and they even move in together. However, Brevman gets a letter and decides to go work at a summer camp in Montreal with his friend Krantz, leaving Shell alone until he returns. However, Brevman doesn't ever return back to New York City at the end. Instead, he stays in Montreal, writing Shell this letter as a goodbye. Dearest Shell, it will take me a little while to tell you. It is 2 a.m. You're sleeping between the green striped sheets we bought together, and I know exactly how your body looks. You are laying on your side, knees bent like a jockey, and you've probably pushed the pillow off the bed, and your hair looks like calligraphy, and one hand is cupped beside your mouth, and one arm leads over the edge like a bowsprit, and your fingers are limp like things that are drifting. It's wonderful to be able to speak to you, my darling Shell. I can be peaceful because I know what I want to say. I'm afraid of loneliness. Just visit a mental hospital or factory, sit in a bus or cafeteria. Everywhere, people are living in utter loneliness. I tremble when I think of all the single voices raised, lottery chance hooks aimed at the sky, and their bodies are growing old, hearts beginning to leak like old accordions, trouble in the kidneys, sphincters going limp like old elastic bands. It happens to us, to you under the green stripes. It makes me want to take your hand. And this is the miracle that all the jukeboxes are eating quarters for. That we can protest this indifferent massacre. Take your hand is a very good protest. I wish you were beside me now. I went to a funeral today. It was no way to bury a child. His real death contrasted violently with the hush-hush scaredness of the chapel. The beautiful words didn't belong on the rabbi's lips. I don't know if any modern man is fit to bury a person. The family's grief was real, but the air-conditioned chapel conspired against its expression. I felt lousy and choked because I had nothing to say to the corpse. When they carried away the undersized coffin, I thought the boy was cheated. I can't claim any lesson. When you read my journal, you'll see how close I am to murder. I can't even think about it or stop moving. I mean, literally, I can't move a muscle. All I know is that something prosaic, the comfortable world, has been destroyed irrevocably, and something important guaranteed. A religious stink hovers above the city, and we all breathe it. Work goes on at the Orator St. Joseph. The copper dome is raised. The Temple Emmanuel initiates a building fund. A religious stink composed of musty shrine and tabernacle smells, decayed wreaths and rotting bar mitzvah tables. Boredom, money, vanity, guilt packs the pews. The candles, memorials, eternal lights shining unconvincingly, like neon signs, sincere as advertising. The holy vessels belch mismal smoke. Good lovers turn away. I'm not a good lover, or I'd be with you now. I'd be beside you, not using this longing for proof of feeling. That's why I'm writing to you and sending you this summer's journal. I want you to know something about me. Here it is, day by day. Dear Shell, if you let me, I'd always keep you 400 miles away and write you pretty poems and letters. That's true. I'm afraid to live in any place but an expectation. I am no life risk. At the beginning of the summer, we said, let's be surgical. I don't want to see you or hear from you. I like to counterpoint this with tenderness, but I'm not going to. I want no attachments. I want to begin again. I think I love you, but I love the idea of a clean slate more. I can say these things to you because we've come that close. The temptation of discipline makes me ruthless. I want to end this letter now. It is the first one I didn't make a carbon of. I'm close to flying down and jumping into the bed beside you. Please don't phone or write. Something wants to begin in me. From Lawrence. Shell sent 3 telegrams that he didn't answer. 5 times he allowed his phone to ring all night. One morning she awakened suddenly and couldn't catch her breath. Lawrence had done exactly the same thing to her as Gordon. The letters. Everything. Yeah, this book is great. Not amazing, but definitely worth your time. Thank you for sticking through this whole video. If you like Leonard Cohen or just want a good story, I suggest you read this book. And if this video does well, I'll make a video on Cohen's other works, such as his other novel, Beautiful Losers. Thank you for watching. Comment down below your views on the video. Make sure to subscribe, and thank you for watching. Bye!